To Jason Silva.
Hello. Thank you. Hi, everybody. How's it going? Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to Cisco. It's really a thrill to be with you guys at this wonderful arena. Now, I'm extremely passionate about human imagination. I'm extremely passionate about human creativity. And this has led to a passion for technology, because I truly believe that technology is the embodiment of human creativity. Technology is the literalization of human imagination. Technology is the human mind turned inside out. And we use our technology to overcome our limits, to overcome our boundaries. The cognitive philosophers David Chalmers and Andy Clark describe technology as literally a scaffolding of our minds that we use to extend our thought, our reach, and our vision. And it has always been so. 100,000 years ago in the savannas of Africa, when early hominids first picked up a stick to reach a fruit on a really high tree, we've been using our tools to extend our reach. We've been using our tools to extend our agency, to redefine our limits. And we've been in a symbiotic relationship with technology since then. When we started using stone tools, when we started cooking our food, it acted as an external stomach. It pre-digested our food, and over time, our jaws actually shrank. So there's been this physiological, this symbiotic relationship between man and his tools. As Marshall McLuhan, the media theorist, used to say, we build the tools, and then the tools build us. This is the relationship. Now, granted, back then, technology changed over many, many, many generations. So you were kind of born into a world and you died into a world that didn't change very much. Today, however, we live in a world of disruption, a world of transformation, a world in which it feels like the rug is being pulled from underneath our feet, and it's moving so fast, and it's accelerating, and we can't quite make sense why that is. We can't quite wrap our heads around why today these technological disruptions are coming so fast. They're coming within our own lifespan, and it's so disruptive. And the reason for that is because we're future blind. The reason for that is because our brains evolved in a world that was linear and that was local. Our intuition, when we think about change, is linear. But we don't live in a linear and local world anymore. We live in a world that is globally interconnected and that is exponential in its nature. Technology evolves at exponential rates. You've probably heard the term Moore's Law. But again, our intuition is linear. So to understand the nature of exponential change, I'm going to use an example popularized by the futurist Ray Kurzweil, who's one of my heroes and a dear friend. It's called the 30 steps example. He says, if you take 30 linear steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, by step 30, you get to 30. That's linear change. That's intuition. Linear change. 100,000 years ago, there's a predator over there. It's running towards us. We're making a linear calculation about how quickly it's going to come and eat us. Again, that's how we think about change, in a linear fashion. But if you take the same amount of steps, those same 30 steps, but you do it exponentially, you go 2, 4, 8. By step 30, you're at 1 billion. So think about that for a second. 30 linear steps gets you to 30. 30 exponential steps, which is how technology evolves, gets you to 1 billion in the same amount of steps. Now that is the reason why the smartphone in our pocket today is 1 million times cheaper, 1 million times smaller, yet 1,000 times more powerful than what used to be a $60 million supercomputer that was half a building in size 40 years ago. And you needed like special permission to get access to it. So think about that for a second. What used to be $60 million and half a building in size now fits in your pocket. In fact, this is 1,000 times more powerful. A young kid in Africa with a smartphone today has better communications technology than a head of state, than the US president had 25 years ago. So how does this change the world? How does this change what becomes possible? right? Stephen Johnson, in his book Where Good Ideas Come From, A Natural History of Innovation, talks about the adjacent possible. The adjacent possible is like a shadow future that hovers over the present and provides a map of all the ways in which the present can reinvent itself. So with these supercomputers in our pockets, how does our adjacent possible transform? You know, when you think about disruption, you should really be thinking about opportunity for reinvention, for transformation, to redefine what it means to be human. Tools to change the world are now in everybody's hands. And these exponential growth curves are not stopping. That means in the next 25 years, this will shrink down to the size of a blood cell. It'll be inside our brains, interfacing with our biological neurons, further reverse engineering us from inside out. The symbiosis, my friends, is not complete. Now, granted, it's a lot to handle. The speed of change is overwhelming. And so I've made it one of my missions to try to tell stories, to try to convey a sense of excitement and optimism when we think about the future, when we think about this magic carpet ride that we're on, this trip that we're on with our technology. And so I'd like to start off with a video today. It's called To Be Human is to Be Transhuman. And again, it makes this argument that we are our tools, that our tools are extended scaffoldings of mind. It's a way for us to incorporate non-biological props and scaffoldings into our very mindware. We build the tools and the tools build us. And this is how we extend our reach. So let's show the first video. To be human is to be transhuman. So there's a great line by Shakespeare in which he says, "We know what we are, we know not what we may be." And in the age of accelerating technologies in which we extend the cognitive reach of our minds, the perimeters of our humanness with these extensions of self, these exoskeletons, these technological scaffoldings, you know, the wings of our aircrafts and the signals traveling through our smartphones, sending our thoughts electrified at the speed of light across oceans of sky. We redefine and extend what it means to be human. Edward O. Wilson says, we have actually decommissioned natural selection, and now we must look deep within ourselves and decide what we wish to become. We are now the chief agents of evolution. We have reversed engineered the software of biology and are about to rewire and upgrade and redefine what it is to be a Homo sapien. Juan Enriquez uses the term Homo evolutus, the being that evolves itself, that transforms itself, right? Ray Kurzweil, we didn't stay in the caves. We haven't stayed on the planet. Biology, just another membrane to be transcended. You know, Marvin Minsky used to say, will robots inherit the earth? Yes, they will, but they will be our children. And you know, I love this idea because we hear the term transhumanism, and what it means to be human is to be transhuman. We are the species that transforms and transcends. We never stopped. We always did. It's what we are. And so here we are today. Thank you. Here we are today facing these exponential transformations, and I travel the world and I talk about Moore's Law, and most people say, okay, I buy that because I've seen it. The world has changed over the last 30 years with these exponential growth curves when it comes to information technology, the world of digital disruption. But then people often ask, what about the physical world in which we live? What about the world of flesh and concrete? Certainly that is not going to change exponentially, right? Well, it turns out that's not necessarily the case, because the world of flesh and concrete is now becoming an information technology as well, which means it's also subject to these exponential growth curves. So take biology, for example. Now, we're in the beginning of the age of biotechnology. Biotechnology means mastering the information processes of biology. Biotechnology means that biology now becomes the operating software for our creativity. Biology can be hacked, it can be upgraded, it can be reprogrammed. The physicist Freeman Dyson talks about a very near future where a new generation of artists and engineers will be writing genomes with the fluency that Blake and Byron wrote verses. The speed of gene sequencing today is going faster than Moore's law. 3 times faster than the exponential Moore's law numbers I was giving to you. That's the progress we're making when it comes to genetic engineering and gene sequencing today. So think about that. The next $1 trillion business, the new apps are going to be the apps for our biology. We're going to have lab-on-a-chip technologies, iPhone-sized tricorders that can diagnose you better than 10 board-certified doctors. Imagine that deployed in a rural village. How's that going to change our space of possibility? Google's Larry Page started Calico, the California Life Extension Company. They had a Time magazine cover called Google and the End of Death. I mean, people are starting to think about biology as literally the new digital, the new space that can be hacked, transformed, and upgraded. And so when you consider what we've done with digital technology over the past 30 years, and you apply those insights into what's going to happen with our biology, synthetic biology, genetic engineering, again, we're going to redefine what it means to be human. These are the next $1 trillion businesses. Then you think about material science, nanotechnology. What is nanotechnology? This is really mind-blowing. Nanotechnology is patterning atoms, right? The physical building blocks of the physical world, right? Patterning atoms the way we pattern ones and zeros in the digital space. So all of a sudden, with nanotechnology, the physical world becomes a programmable medium. The physical world can be rendered at the speed of human imagination. We can literally create software that writes its own hardware. We can make buildings self-assemble. We can turn anything into anything because everything is made of atoms. X-Prize founder Peter Diamandis and Steven Kotler wrote a whole book about this called Abundance, Why the Future Will Be Better Than You Think. So you have these overlapping revolutions in biotechnology and nanotechnology and, of course, artificial intelligence and digital, which will continue at exponential growth rates. So these 3 overlapping revolutions lead us towards a kind of event horizon. It's kind of like staring into the sun. You know, you can't quite see what's going to happen. And so the term in Silicon Valley that's been used as a great kind of catch-all metaphor to describe this ultimate transformation is, they call it a singularity. Now, a singularity is a metaphor borrowed from physics to describe what happens when you go through a black hole. Namely, the laws of physics as you know them no longer apply. And so it's kind of crazy to use this metaphor to describe what's about to happen to human beings. Now, there have been other singularities in the past. You could argue the emergence of language was a singularity. You know, language is a tool that reveals to the mind what the mind thinks. It turned a feral mind into a tool that could think with purpose and deliberation, you know? And the world on the other side of language would be inconceivable to humans on the other side of that line. So that was a singularity, a game-changing moment in our history. And it is said that these overlapping revolutions in biotech, nanotech, and artificial intelligence are going to be akin to a change like the evolution of language. So get ready, folks. It's going to be crazy. So this next video tries to convey what do we think about when we think about a future that we can't quite imagine. See, I think that's where art and poetry is necessary, right? Marshall McLuhan used to say it's always been the artist who realizes that the future is the present and uses his work to prepare the grounds for it. So let's show the next video, The Future of Us.
So let's talk about the future of us. What does that even mean? The future of us. It's a look at what comes next. It's a look at what might be. Because today, exponentially emerging technologies are transforming what's possible. They're helping us overcome, transcend even biological limitations. The very rules of what it is to be human are up for grabs. We're rewriting the software of life with biotechnology. We're turning matter into a programmable medium with nanotechnology. We're creating sentient minds with artificial intelligence that are not bound by the limitations of biology. These 3 overlapping revolutions, GNR, genetics, nanotechnology, and robotics, together will be leveraged to lead us towards a black hole-like like impossible to fathom singularity. It's like staring into the sun, a moment of a rousing symphonic climax when all of mind, leveraged and networked together, transcends its biological origins and we become something more. People worry about the AIs and the them. Well, as Kurzweil says, that's going to be us. The future of us is ours to dream up.
Crazy, right? Now, we're living in a very unique time. Thank you. We're living in a very unique time in human history. Now, I talk about this stuff, future tech, we're extending, transcending, becoming something else. This endless process of becoming. Kevin Kelly's new book, The Inevitable, he uses the term becoming. This endless process of becoming. We are not nouns, we are verbs. We are unfolding, we are becoming. Now, some people say, wow, but so much technology, we're tinkering with nature. Maybe this is like fundamentally unnatural. There's a bit of apprehension at times because, it's a lot to take in. But something that's really interesting is also put out there by the founder of Wired Magazine, Kevin Kelly, is that we actually need to start thinking of technology as a living thing. He refers to it as the technium. He says it's an organism. He calls it the seventh kingdom of life, and that it's subject to the same evolutionary forces as biology. So when you start to think about it this way, as literally a part of us that's not natural, just not unnatural, just like we are made of atoms, technology is made of atoms too. And just like we emerged from nature, technology is emerging from us. And so this distinction, this duality between the unnatural, or between the natural and the technological is a false duality that we need to transcend. We need to make this cognitive shift. And I remember reading this essay. Santa Fe Institute published some findings about cities, and they were finding that cities operate according to the same principles as organisms, and that they have the same metabolic rates. And then you read stuff about how the internet is organized like the neurons in our brain, and that the way ants, when they hunt for food, the forager ants, they are organized the same way as TCP/IP protocols. So the more these man-made systems become elegant and sublime and complex, the more they start to mimic or mirror all these patterns of systems found in nature. So again, to understand is to perceive patterns. You start to connect the dots, you start to see all of it as part of the same evolutionary paradigm. And this next video is about that idea. It's about getting over this notion of duality and separation and realizing that it's all just this anti-entropic phenomenon. That's what we are, that's what technology is. Entropy wants to destroy everything. The anti-entropic phenomenon, us, we want to move towards greater complexity, greater organization. That's what we do, that's what technology is a part of us for. So let's show the next video.
There's a mind-expanding idea that smashes the false duality between nature and technology. The realization that nature and technology are one and the same, a continuum, smack in the middle between the born and the made, is summed up in the lines, to understand is to perceive patterns. That moment when the dots connect, you see the gestalt, long view, and you see the big picture. This notion of patterns. For example, Paul Stamets has written about the mycelial archetype and how the information sharing systems that comprise the internet, a man-made system, mirror the neurons in our brain, a natural system, which in turn mirror computer models of dark matter in the universe. They all share the exact same intermingled filamental structure. It's unbelievable. Or for example, the fact that forager ants, when they hunt for food, their patterns of hunting mirror the TCP/IP protocols that govern information flow of traffic on the internet. Same patterns. Jeffrey West from the Santa Fe Institute tells us that cities are actually like organisms. They have metabolic rates, and that alleys are like capillaries. Fly an airplane, look at a city from the sky. It looks like a motherboard. It looks like a microchip. Information arranged, evolution, life, sentience, mind. To understand is to perceive these patterns. There is no duality between nature and technology. It is all one and the same.
Pretty out there, huh? Yeah. So, we're living in a world of transformation. Technology is moving very, very, very fast. This disruption is an opportunity for reinvention. Technology is a part of who we are. Biology and material science is also becoming an information technology. A lot's happening. And so what do we do? how do we use these tools? How do we use these instruments to make an impact, to impact the world in a positive way? You know, sometimes when you look at the media, it feels like, obviously, if it bleeds, it leads. And so the negativity gets to the forefront. We don't often get to celebrate or talk about all the things that are going right in the world. You know, Steven Pinker has a great TED Talk called The Myth of Violence, when he says that contrary to what you see in the media, today violence is the lowest than it's ever been in all of human history. As our technologies have grown more complex, the world has become infinitely less violent and less dangerous. And today the chances of a human dying at the hands of another human are actually the lowest than they've ever been in all of human history. You know, the smartphone, there was a United Nations, Bill Clinton wrote a cover story in Time magazine called A Case for Optimism a few years back. And he cited a United Nations study that found that the smartphone was the greatest invention in history to pull people out of poverty. How come this doesn't get talked about more? So a while back I decided, why don't we do this like sort of digital campaign to talk about what's possible with these technologies. We call it the Redefined Billionaire Campaign. Now, in an age of exponential technologies, people have become very ambitious. Everybody wants to make the next startup, become the next billionaire, the next Mark Zuckerberg, which is lovely. But what if we redefine this concept of billionaire? You know, it's true that today an individual, right, or a group of individuals can achieve more than governments and corporations could achieve a couple decades ago. I mean, this is a fact. But if we redefine the concept of billionaire, and we say a billionaire is not somebody who has $1 billion, but somebody who creates something that touches 1 billion people in a positive way, right? I mean, that's an ambition worth having. Let's redefine billionaire, because again, it's within the scope of the possible. Just like you can launch a startup that makes you a billionaire in terms of money, you can launch a startup, a piece of software, an algorithm, an idea that touches 1 billion people in a positive way. So we thought, how cool. Let's make a video about this concept, and in turn, let's shoot the video with a smartphone to show that we have the tools to spread these messages mimetically, to electrify our thoughts at the speed of light and spread them through the world and infect people with a sense of possibility. And this video is the result of that. It's called The Redefined Billionaire, the Captains of Spaceship Earth. Let's show it.
We live in a world of exponential technological advancement. What this literally means is that we have new construction kits for our reality, new tools with which to probe at the adjacent possible. So consider the implications, right? As Marshall McLuhan used to say, first we build the tools, and then the tools build us. We are designed by what we have designed. There are these feedback loops of mind, tool, and world that radically redefine our boundaries, that radically transform what it means to be human. To be human today is to crisscross the skies. To be human today is to create technosocial wormholes, mind-to-mind communication that overcomes the limits of time, space, and distance. And so what do? Well, we need to radically reach out to one another in ways that we haven't before. There's a great line that says empathy rarely extends beyond our line of sight. In other words, it's out of sight, it is out of mind. But if anything, these wireless communication technologies are radically extending our line of sight. They're providing new ontological maps of the real. They're giving us the astronaut overview effect. We are seeing the big picture. We are seeing that we are the captains of Spaceship Earth. And what shall we do? We need to extend our hands to one another. We've never had such tools to overcome all of the limitations of our humanity. We have the power, we have the will, we have the capacity, the creative capacity to overcome our limits. And so today, billions of us linking to one another, creating a global node, a global brain. What is the new definition of billionaire? The new definition of billionaire is he who will positively affect the lives of 1 billion people. He or she who will reach out and say, I will positively affect the lives of 1 billion people. This should be our goal. This is our responsibility. Here's our chance.
Thanks, guys. I really do believe that we have a unique opportunity to touch this world in ways that we never thought we could, to address the grand challenges of humanity. Now, part of the reason that I spend so much time emphasizing the implications of exponential change is because if we start thinking exponentially, our ambitions for what's possible will be fundamentally transformed. And this is a key message. We must not conform. We must not settle for what has come before. We have to be salmon swimming upstream. We have to remember that everything good and great begins at the edge of our comfort zone. Don't just draw outside the line, draw outside the page. You know, we must never forget we are cosmic revolutionaries, not stooges conscripted to advance a natural order that kills everyone. So our ambitions need to be as big as our technology. Our ambitions need to be as big as our innovation and our creativity. And this next video emphasizes just that. Those who were seen dancing were called insane by those who could not hear the music. But you guys can hear the music. So let's show the next video on nonconformity.
So one of the prevailing motifs here on Shots of Awe is, as human beings, as conscious agents, how do we resolve the inherent tension between wanting to realize, to fully realize our potential, to realize ourselves as individuals who stand with dignity, and resist the tug of conformity? How do we avoid succumbing to a zombified trance state of blindly following others in a herd, as sheep, as hamsters in a hamster wheel? And you know, it's funny because I think that the way we resolve that is by taking that plunge, by answering that call that Joseph Campbell talks about. There is no one map for how to live our lives. Reality is just a word, and you're not supposed to use it without quotation marks around it anyway, as Joseph Campbell says. We are all free to create our own reality, but it's only when we are bold enough to decondition our thinking, to transcend what Robert Anton Wilson calls the reality tunnel, right? This linguistic and conceptual and symbolic framework that constructs reality, this animatrix pulled in front of your eyes, blinding you from ecstatic visions of what might be behind those walls. You know, we are larvas who haven't turned ourselves into butterflies yet. And there's that great line by Nietzsche that says, those who were seen dancing were called insane by those who could not hear the music. Words of Jack Kerouac. The only people for me are the mad ones. Mad to live, mad to talk, mad to be saved, desirous of everything at the same time. Those who never yawn or say a commonplace thing, but burn, burn, burn like yellow Roman candles exploding like spiders across the sky.
Need to go forth, everybody. So, I want to leave you with one more key idea here. You know, as you can probably notice from these videos, I become very excited. I'm very passionate about these themes. And the reason is because I think these ideas should make us awestruck. They should induce a state of wonderment. They should get us out of our heads and put us into a state of flow, which is characterized by selflessness, timelessness, effortlessness, and information richness. It's when we tap into our potential and we are just flowing. We're ready to go. We're ready to make an impact. We're ready to achieve the impossible. And there was some studies out of Berkeley and Stanford on the subject of awe, experiences of awe, which they describe as experiences of such perceptual expansion or such perceptual vastness that you have to reconfigure your mental maps of the world in order to assimilate what you're seeing. So in other words, you have no references for what you're witnessing, and so you're forced to sort of author a new chapter of the possible in your brain. Think of the first time you maybe saw the Grand Canyon, or the first time you saw the Hubble Space Telescope images of the universe, and for a second you were able to grasp the intensity of the infinity of space. And so these moments of awe, these moments of radiance, you know, they're temporary, they're ecstatic, and then they pass. But it turns out that they leave us with residual feelings of increased compassion, increased well-being, increased creativity, and they act as anti-inflammatory in our bodies. So there's like all this health and cognitive benefits from being willing to blow our own minds, from being willing to step outside of the familiar, that defamiliarizing shock of seeing something for the first time, of transcending the been there's and done that's of the adult mind, and seeing the world as if through the eyes of a child, so that you see that anything is possible. So awe is therapy. Timothy Leary was right. In order to use your head, you've got to go out of your mind once in a while. And so this last video is a celebration of awe, and it'll be the closing video. Let's show it. So I think a lot about the contrast between banality and wonder, between disengagement and radiant ecstasy, between being unaffected by the here and now and being absolutely ravished emotionally by it. And I think one of the problems for human beings is mental habits. Once we create a comfort zone, we rarely step outside of that comfort zone. But the consequence of that is a phenomenon known as hedonic adaptation. Overstimulation to the same kind of thing, the same stimuli again and again and again, renders said stimuli invisible. Your brain has already mapped it in its own head, and you no longer literally have to be engaged by that. We have eyes yet see not, ears that hear not, and hearts that neither feel nor understand. There's a great book called The Wondering Brain that says that one of the ways that we elicit wonder is by scrambling the self temporarily so that the world can seep in. As Henry Miller says, even a blade of grass, when given proper attention, becomes an infinitely magnificent world in itself, you know? Darwin said attention, if sudden and close, graduates into surprise, and this into astonishment, and this into stupefied amazement. That's what rapture is. That's what illumination is. That's what that sort of infinite comprehending awe that human beings love so much. And so how do we do that? How do we mess with our perceptual apparatus in order to have the kind of emotional and aesthetic experience from life that we render most meaningful? Because we all know those moments are there. Those are the moments that would make Final Cut. Only in these moments we experience afresh the hardly bearable ecstasy of direct energy exploding on our nerve endings. This is the rhapsodic, ecstatic bursting forth of awe that expands our perceptual parameters beyond all previous limits. And we literally have to reconfigure our mental models of the world in order to assimilate the beauty of that download. That is what it means to be inspired. The Greek root of the term means to breathe in, to take it in. We fit the universe through our brains and it comes out in the form of nothing less than poetry. We have a responsibility to awe. So I leave you with that, folks. We have a responsibility to awe. Thank you guys so much. I'd love to continue the conversation on Twitter. All the videos, you can find them on my YouTube page, Shots of Awe, and thank you.
That was awesome, Jason. That was fantastic.
Thank
and you stole my line.
Oh.
It was great.
Amazing. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. I was just going to say, I had so many shots of awe in like 20 minutes than I've ever had in my life.
Good.
Sir, you are a poet. You're a rapper.
Thank you.
Seriously, you are the best innovation rapper I have ever heard in my life.
That's
so
amazing. Thank you. It takes one to know one.
Absolutely. Now, what we did, we actually sent out ahead of time on social media and we asked for some questions.
Great.
Are you game for taking a few?
Game. Yes.
Good, bring it on. So the first one is from Noor Momani. How did you get into tech and innovation?
Yeah, well, I was always a really curious kid, and I was always into sort of science fiction and technology and ideas about the future and ideas about what would become possible. And that interest, you know, I was always into sort of tech gadgets and so on and so forth. But really the philosophy of technology was after I read Kurzweil's book, The Singularity is Near. It was about 8 years ago or 10 years ago now, and it was like he finally gave voice to what I felt what was happening, you know, in terms of like the internet and the future, but he grounded it all in these real exponential growth curves. So it was data driven, and for the first time it gave me permission to fantasize about a future where technology just becomes this grand thing in our lives. But it was grounded in facts. So I wasn't getting into the woo-woo. It was all grounded in real stuff.
Not the woo-woo. You weren't into the woo-woo. Okay, so I know that the audience will be keen to hear this. Shots of awe and brain games, awesome. What's next?
So I got news. I'm doing a new show with National Geographic Channel. It's called Origins. It comes out early next year, so keep an eye out for it. And it's about how the world became modern. So we look at innovations we take for granted today, like medicine, tools and technologies, language, and we trace those things back to their origins. And it's going to air globally on National Geographic next year. Origins.
And you heard it first here, guys.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Jason, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.